In continuation to earlier video on Google Sheet where we discussed about the VLOOKUP and HLOOKUP in Google Sheets, this video will cover pivot table in Google Sheets. As highlighted in the previous video, it is important for Excel users to learn Google Sheets also to stay pertinent. If you also feel the same way or are curious about how things are done differently in Google Sheets, then you are at the right place. This is the second video of the video stream on Google Sheets, and here not only we will learn how to use Google Sheets but also we'll compare it with Excel. So let's start the Google Sheet versus Excel. Hi guys, welcome back to Tech Reflections. I'm Vikram and this is the second video of Google Sheet versus Excel stream. In today's video, we will see how to create pivot table in Google Sheets and how is it similar and different from the same in Excel. As this video is on Google Sheets and I'll compare it with Excel, it will be helpful if you already know how pivot table works in Excel. If you want to watch a detailed video on that, then you can find the same by clicking on the I button at the top right of this video. Let's deep dive into the pivot table in Google Sheets. In this video, we will cover three scenarios for pivot table. First scenario, we will see how the basic pivot table is created in Google Sheets. Then in the second scenario, we will cover how to add filters to the existing basic pivot table. And then finally, we'll see how we can add a calculated field to the pivot table. The first scenario is that we are looking for is a basic pivot table. So on your screens, you can see that we have a table where in our Google Sheets where we have sales data for an organization dealing into stationery items. So we have order ID, then date on which the sale was performed, location where it was done, the salesperson who has done it, category, item, and the unit of items that are sold, unit cost, and then the total sale price. So let's see how the basic pivot table is created. So the scenario we are looking for the basic pivot table is the total sales for a location. Okay, so to start the pivot table, as you must be aware that in Excel, for a pivot table, we need to go to insert and then to the pivot table. But here in this Google Sheet, this option is not under insert. So see, you can see the item there are in insert, it's not there. Rather, you will find this pivot table option under data. So when you go to the data option, data menu item, then you'll get this pivot table. So we'll click on that. So in this case, now, because right now the cell that is selected is outside the data, so pivot, this dialog box is trying to assume its own range, which is not correct. It's right now showing as A1 to D100, which is not the correct data range. For us, it should be from A to I column. So let's cancel it and let's click somewhere inside the data. And now again, go to data and then click on pivot table. And this time it has automatically selected that range, which is A1 to I85, which is the correct reference to the data. So now as compared to Excel, there also, when we click on the insert pivot table, it automatically selects that data if we are inside that data set. If the cell selected is inside that data set, it automatically pick up that data range as our source data. So the next option in this screen is new sheet, which is okay, which means that the pivot table that will be created would be inserted into a new sheet rather than the sheet that we are right now on. This is always a good practice to have the pivot table on a new sheet because pivot tables are dynamic and they will increase in the size. So it's better to give them the space. Okay, then we click on the create, and this is the pivot table created. This is a blank pivot table. If you see on the left of the screen, you have a structure created for pivot table, and on the right side, we have a pivot table editor. But if we let's compare it with Excel, I've also done it for Excel. So when we go to the pivot table and the options that you get are for pivot table fields is that you get a list of all the headers file on the right, which you can drag into the boxes that are given for filter, column, rows, and values. Here we can just select and drag that value to whichever box we want. But in this case, in case of Google Sheet, it's not working that way. It's a little different. So here we have rows, column, value, and filter. There are drop downs. We can just add this from here. Like if you can see, if you click on add, you will get all the column headers here, and you can select which values, which columns you want under the row part of our pivot table, which one under the column and values part. So before that, you can see there is another option which is suggested. Suggested here means that this is on the basis of your data. Google Sheet is giving you some suggested pivot tables. You can directly click on them and create the pivot table if that is what you want. But if you want to create your own, you can do it here also. The same option was under recommended pivot tables and Excel. So here it is with a different name. It is the suggested pivot tables. But let's leave it. We will come to how we can create our own pivot table. So the option that we were looking for is that we wanted to see uh, the first option that we're trying to see here is the total sale for each location. So how can we do that? Total sales for each location. So on the row part, we want to see all the location. So we'll just select. So once we select, you can see the pivot table is getting created automatically the moment we have selected a field here. Now we have an option of how we want to order it. We want them to be in the ascending order or descending order. And then also we can uh, get them the sorting. As of now, it's the only location. So that's the only field shown here. Now we want to see the total sales. So let's say we want to show the items in the column part. So we'll just go to add, click on item. So again, we have order and sort by here. Right now it's showing in your pivot table, you can see that items are shown in the column. And now we move to the third part, that is the values. Value will give us the intersection part of the pivot table, where we will get the data of any particular item sold in any particular location. So that would be shown to us. So in values here, what we can do is we can, as we want to see the sales, so we'll add field as total. So this pivot table is showing us that data where all the items sales are shown for the location. So see, for any location, let's say Arizona, uh, we know that there is a sale of $588 for the compass box. We have a sale of 1792 notebooks, $1792 of for notebooks, and the total sale of 10,136 for Arizona. So this is a basic pivot table where we have categorized our data, and now we had 85 rows of data, which is now summarized into summarized and broken down into the data, where we can easily see which location has what amount of sale for a particular item. Okay, so this is the first scenario that we were looking for. The second scenario, let's go back to our data range. The second scenario we want to see is the total sale for each location filtered with the unit cost. Now we want to filter this data. We don't want all this data to be available. We just want that specific items which are within the range of that much unit cost should be displayed. Let's see how that will be done. So let us create a new pivot table for that. We'll go to data. Again, we select anywhere within the data range, then data, and then pivot table. And here, this is the range we have, which is correctly selected, and we want it on the new sheet. So we create it. That's the blank pivot table we've got. Now in the row, I just add location. and in the column I add items, and now in the value field I add the total sales. So this is what we created in the previous uh, pivot table also. The additional what we are doing here is that we are using this another field called filters. So in this filter, let us filter it by unit cost. So once it shows unit cost, so you can see that it right now showing all the items. So we have not filtered this data on any particular value. So how can we do that? If we click on this drop down, so it will show you me all the unit cost. So first of all, we just clear all of them. And let's say if we want to see only those items where the unit cost is less than or equal to $7. So in that case, we can just select this top 4 items and click on OK. So our pivot table gets updated on the basis of this filter. So now this is showing it's not showing whole of the whole of the data set into this, but only those items where the unit cost is less than equal to $7. So this is how the this filter works for our pivot table. So coming up in this video is how to add calculated field in the pivot table. If you're finding this video useful, then like the video and share it with your friends. Also subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon so that you get notified when the next video will be published. Now we will see how to add a calculated field in the pivot table. For calculated field, as we have not covered this in our earlier video on pivot tables in Excel, so that also I'll try to cover in this video. But let's see first how these calculated fields can be added into the pivot table in Google Sheets. So for that, let us create another pivot table. So again, we will go to the data menu option, and then under that pivot table, and then we select this to create another pivot table. And this time we'll just add in the row part, we just add location, and in the values we just add total. So this gives us the total sales for those particular location, that is Arizona, Florida, Indiana, New York, and Texas. And now we want to add another calculated field here for that we want to see the percentage total of percentage of the sales for this total sales as per the location. So if we want to see percentage sales for each location, so we'll add a calculated field. So for that we will just um, go into the values field once again, values drop down, and in that we'll select, and at the last of it you can see an option calculated field. We'll just click on that. So here you can see there is a new column got added. Right now it shows as values as 0, and here it shows a formula. It asks me to update a formula. So in formula, what I'll do, I simply just write the field name which I want here. So as of now, I just use total. The moment you put total, it will show the same field which is there in the column B in our pivot table. But now we'll change this because we want the percentage sales rather than the total sales. So under that, if you see, there is an option called show as and default. So default is the same the field that we have already selected, but in this field we want not the total sales, we want the percentage of the grand total. So we have an option for that. So we'll just select that option and see the value changes in our pivot table. So here in the calculated field, we can see that the 34% of the total sales is done in Arizona. That's the top uh, state for as per the sales is concerned. So this is how you can add any calculated field to the existing pivot table, because we can do this as a calculation as outside this pivot table also, but later on if the pivot table gets extends, then in that case it will be it will give us an error because pivot table needs a space to get extended. And in that case, if we already have a value in those cells, then the pivot table will give us an error. Okay, so this is how it works in uh, Google Sheet, and now let's try doing it in the Excel. Okay, so in Excel, I have already created the same pivot table where I have taken total sales for each location, and let's see how can we add a calculated field, that is the percentage of grand total here. So we'll just click on this pivot table, and we'll see on the right side we get all these options once again. So first of all, if you want to keep this column for this total sales, we can keep it, and then we add another the same column again by dragging this and keeping it into the values box, and we got this sum of total 2, and now there is another column available in the pivot table. So now we go to this in the this box and right click. Even don't have to right click, we just click on that and we'll get this small menu where we can select value field settings, and we come to this dialog box, and in that there is a tab for show values as. So we just click on that, and here you can see it shows us the show value as no calculation. So right now there is no calculation, it's directly showing the total sales, but we want the percentage. So we can just use this drop down and select percentage of grand total as we did in the Google Sheets, and click on that, click OK. And now again, this is the way this is changed, and again it's showing us the total sale as 34% for Arizona. The total sales is exactly the same way we did it for Google Sheet, although it's a different way of doing it. There we add uh, another field into the value drop down, and then we changed it to show as percentage of grand total. Here again in the values box, we just added this value, this field once again, and change its show value as. Okay, so this is how we'll see all the calculated fields gets added to our pivot table. With these examples of from Google Sheet and this Excel, I hope you had a good idea how pivot table works in Google Sheet and how it is similar and different both at the same time in from Excel. In subsequent videos in this stream, we will explore more such tools and functions in Google Sheet, and we'll compare it with Excel. Let me know in the comments below if this video was helpful to you in starting to use Google Sheets. If you haven't, I recommend doing so now. If you want to learn more about VLOOKUP and HLOOKUP functions and how they work in Google Sheets, then the link for its video will be on your screen now. Before closing this video, I'd like to wish you all a happy and prosperous Diwali 2020. I'll see you all in the next video. Till then, stay safe and stay healthy. Goodbye.